everyone. Welcome back to Amplify Your Legacy. Today we have an amazing guest, Gabriella Keys, better known as Rella B. Rella B's journey started in the Washoe County School District while attending the University of Nevada. Later, her adventurous spirit took her to the skies as a flight attendant, where she discovered her love for writing picture books. She's a mother, a former educator. She uses her platform to promote financial literacy, emotional intelligence, and self awareness. She is the host of the podcast Reading with Rella B and runs the Books and Bubbles workshop, which combines literacy and STEM education for underserved communities. I'm so excited to hear her insights on old beliefs that we've been holding on to that might be doing us more harm than good. So this is going to be a wonderful conversation about self-awareness, financial education, and raising kids to be emotionally and financially strong. Rella B, welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you are so very welcome. The journey as a children's book author has been so inspiring. You have done so much in a short amount of time. Right now, you're empowering kids with financial literacy and emotional intelligence. What's the biggest lesson you hope kids will and parents will take away from your books?
I think from my books, I put in a lot of layered lessons into most of my books, and some of them I want little kids to just learn their colors and their shapes.
Mhm.
And in those same stories, I want older kids to be able to realize bigger life lessons like comparison is the thief of joy. So lots of my stories do have like different age appropriate lessons depending on who you're reading it to and how old they are. But ultimately, I just want parents to be able to connect with their kids and reading these different stories.
That's wonderful. And you're known as making your stories fun and engaging. You use movement, storytelling, and the financial literacy part that's really near and dear to my heart. What's your secret to keeping your kids engaged and learning?
So I like to add in a lot of different visuals. I will read the story. I ask a lot of different questions. When it comes to money, I'll ask them different ways that they've been able to handle money, whether they have piggy banks, whether they get to use cards or gift cards, the different forms of money
Mm-hmm.
that they've seen. And most of them have seen cards, and sometimes they'll get cash for their birthdays. But it's really interesting that some have heard about interest and some have not. Some have heard about debt and some have not. And those are really important concepts to grasp because they're probably going to be in all of your adult life.
Oh, indeed. I totally agree. Okay, so your podcast, Reading with Rella B, it offers screen-free and interactive learning. How do you see technology and storytelling working together to help the young readers?
So I think that as long as it's a safe platform, then readers can be really benefited by different technologies. Little readers are really liking different screen free options like Yodos or the little like Fisher Price storyteller items, or there's another one I believe called the Tony Box. And then they can choose their own stories that are read to them out loud, and they can follow along with the book or they can just listen to the story screen free. I know my daughters really enjoyed that. But for my podcast, it can be listened to on any streaming platform, and it can also be listened to on Yodo, which gives them a little bit of autonomy and a safe environment to use when it comes to technology.
Okay, so before becoming an author, you worked as a teacher and later a flight attendant. How did those experiences shape your storytelling and the way you approach education today?
Yes, I love kids. I really do. And it's funny because now that I have my own kid, I'm like, wow, like this is different. But I think that kids are just so creative and the things that come out of their mouths sometimes I'm like, wow, like how did you even think of that? And so I think by being around kids for such a long time, it really shaped me as a storyteller because I can take something that a child said and make it into a story and tie in either a STEM concept or like a SEL concept and really try to make it something that people actually want to read their kids. So, as far as like being a teacher and a flight attendant, I was just exposed to a lot of different people, a lot of different backgrounds. And I think that really helped me just create like diverse worlds in my storytelling.
Yes. Okay, so teacher, flight attendant, but your journey hasn't only been about kids. So you also have been using things that cause you to discover more about yourself along the way. Can you share a time when you realized that you didn't need to keep the belief systems that were passed down to you that no longer serve you?
Definitely. I think there's a lot of things that we do because we saw our parents do them or we were
Hmm.
taught to do it a certain way. And I think it's really important to find something that works for you and that serves you better. One thing that I do differently than my parents did is I like to pay my bills by the year. And if
Hmm.
I can't pay it by the year, then I probably am not trying to like buy it. And that comes when it comes to a subscription, when it comes to a phone plan. The only things I don't pay for by the year are like my health insurance, they won't let me pay it early. My life insurance, they won't let me pay it early. I'll only pay my like mortgage maybe 3 months in advance. But everything else I like to pay by the year and have things paid off. And I feel like once I made that shift of like I can actually afford to pay things by the year, I always had more money and I knew where my money was going because when you don't have 20 bills coming out of your account every month, you only have one or two. It's so much easier to build wealth and to actually see where your money is going and what you need and what you don't need.
Yes, and that's better money management too. That's
Yes, I've
wonderful.
loved it.
Great tips. Many of us really don't realize that the old thoughts and beliefs that were passed down to us are harming us. Do you have any ways of identifying those challenges?
I think it takes a lot of self reflection, honestly. Right now, I just went through like a therapy session with my therapist, and I think that's one of the easiest ways to kind of get outside of yourself so you can see what is happening. And my therapist wanted to talk about negative self beliefs, and I was like, I don't have any negative self beliefs. Like, I have a great self esteem. But
Hmm.
on the list that she gave me, one of them was I am right as a negative
Okay.
self belief. And I was very taken aback by that because I was like, why would being right be something bad? And I'm like, I'm not combative. I don't argue with people. But it gets to the point where that is one of my self beliefs. And because of that, I will go out of my way to try to prove somebody else wrong because I believe that like I am right. And in some ways, that's really served me. Like before, when I was younger, my dad asked me, I wanted to be in a beauty pageant. And I told him, he was like, do you think you're pretty enough to be in a beauty pageant? And I was like, yeah, I do. So when I was able to do that, I went on and I won a ton of beauty pageants. And that was amazing. And that felt really good. And that's a
Hmm.
positive way to use that self belief. But at the same time, it can be really destructive and chaotic when you're now doing things to prove people wrong instead of doing things that are like good for you and your soul. So it was really introspective. I would challenge people to try to figure out what their self beliefs are and whether they're still serving you or whether they need to change.
I like that because it also causes separation and confusion as well. So thanks for sharing that. You've written books that teach kids about money, self love, and emotional regulation. Can you give me what your inspiration was behind them?
Yes. So those three books are part of a book set called the It Begins With Me book set. And I wrote those on the plane. And they were kind of just like affirmational stories that I just wanted to be able to tell my daughter all of the time because I wanted her to have very good like self-love habits and just understand that she's amazing just as she is. And I also wanted her, to be emotionally regulated, which is not a thing at 4, but we're working on it. And lastly, I just think it's really important for them to have like a sense of optimism. Kids are already so bubbly and genuinely in awe of the world. And I think it's really important that they keep in touch with that. You know, even if something bad happens, like we can still look at the silver lining.
Yes. Yeah, emotional regulation is really a big topic. And like you said, at that age, kids don't really know what that means, you know. Even for adults, it's really something that we need to get a good handle on. How can
Yes.
parents use if shapes could talk to help their kids understand and manage their emotions better?
So I would say for If Shapes Could Talk, that deals more with jealousy and comparison. And I think that that's a really good conversation to have, especially when kids start to go to school and they may see people that have different things than they do. Like Patricia may have a Stanley Cup and they don't have a Stanley Cup. And
Okay.
that's okay because Patricia may also not have a bike or not be able to go outside and play, but you can go outside and play. So I just think it's really important for that book in particular to have kids be thankful for what they have because you never really know what's going on in somebody else's life, and focusing on what's going on over there is not going to serve you. So that is the best way that parents can use If Shapes Could Talk with their kids, is to just talk about those differences that they may see, but understand that there are so many good things about their life and they should focus on that.
That's a good point because even for kids, of course, you know, when you think of children's books and you're reading to kids, you think it's only for kids. But as the adults are reading it, we're learning something just the same. So for parents or educators that want to use this for, you know, making reading exciting and fun for kids. You said it's about jealousy.
Right.
What would be some tips, practical tips that parents can use when it comes to this book in
So
order to teach them?
I do have some different activities that go along with the book, which are always
Mhm.
great. But also, it's just great to start a conversation with them and ask if they've ever felt that way, if they've ever seen something that they wanted from somebody else, and how did that make them feel, and how can we combat that in the future, or talk about your own experiences. Maybe you grew up and you really wanted to wear your hair down because your friend did, but you weren't allowed to do that. And just different ways that affected you when you were younger. I think the strongest tool that we can use when reading any sort of book is just conversation. But something outside of that is also like pretend play. And you could even use like Barbies and try to like reenact something, or figurines, toy soldiers, even to reenact a situation where maybe they felt a little bit jealous or, you know, envious of somebody else, because I think it'll give you a lot of insight into how they're feeling.
True. You mentioned you provide handouts, so you do hands on activities. Talk to me about Books and Bubbles, the workshop that you provide. It brings literacy and STEM education together.
Yes. So I just piloted this program and it went over really well. I'm really excited about it. I'm currently seeking sponsors so that I can provide it to many kids that are in women's shelters here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and do that as a summer program for them. But I have a book that's about bubbles. So basically, they're welcome to get copies of the books and read those at home. We talk about the different characters in the book, which are each different compositions of bubbles. And then we get to learn about their differences when it comes to their scientific makeup and what goes into being a bubble, because bubbles are made up of polymers and polymers are made up of monomers. And we love mixing soap and water and blowing bubbles. People love playing in
Yes.
bubbles, but there's so much beautiful science that goes behind it, like finding out the color of a bubble, because bubbles are not just like perfectly clear, they actually reflect light and have rainbow colors. So with that program, it's just a really fun way to have kids be able to play in a stimulating environment, figure out how to make big bubbles, how to make little sudsy piles, or be able to use different mediums to create your bubbles. You could use a straw, you could use your hand, you could hold a bubble in your hand, you can listen to, hear it pop. So I just think that it's been a really good program, and I'm hoping to be able to continue providing that. And hopefully with sponsors, it'll be cost free for the entire summer. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, why do you think it's important to provide these experiences, especially in underserved communities?
Especially for like women's shelters and kids that may be in like heavier transitions. I'm also trying to do it for like Ronald McDonald House, where kids may be under the weather, and just like not in the prime of their life, maybe. I think it's really important to kind of give them the chance just to be a kid and experience something that maybe takes their mind off of something else that's going on in their life that's a little bit heavier. I just think it's a really like positive experience for them, because I know, when you're going through things in life, like you don't want to have to be worried about asking for extra things, but being able to be distracted by something that brings you joy can be really therapeutic.
Totally agree. And looking ahead, what's one message or lesson you hope children will remember from your books, even long after they're grown up?
So my whole platform is dedicated to hoping that kids never stop reading. It's just so important to keep reading, whether you're reading audiobooks or whether you're reading picture books or young adult books, romantasy, like whatever it is that you're reading. I just think it's really important because it's a portal into another world, and you can transform your mind, you can transform your life, and you can even just change your mood with reading different books. You can even start writing and make your own books. But I think if kids just make sure that they never stop reading, they'll just have such an expansive outlook on life, because it's a great way to get into somebody else's shoes if you read from a different perspective than your own. So I really enjoy reading, and I hope kids don't stop reading, because I know literacy rates have really fallen and kids don't really read for joy as much as they
Yeah,
used
they
to
don't read for
either.
fun.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Were you a reader when you were younger?
Yes, I loved reading. And if I wasn't reading, I was walking around with my Walkman listening to my tapes. Yes.
As far as you writing, did you have any inspiration from other family members, from elders in your families or other ancestors? Were they writers?
I don't think anybody was a writer. No, I haven't heard that anybody else was a writer. And they all think it's cool that I do it. I really enjoy it. They're all very supportive.
Okay, so what's one must have conversation for every parent to have with their child? What would that be and why?
So this is actually something that I'm trying to write a book about. It's a very hard concept to grasp. But in its most simple form, I think it's really important to talk to your children about the fact that familiarity does not equal safety. Just because you are familiar with something and you see something or you see
Okay.
somebody all the time, that
Mm,
does not mean it's safe. Just because you play this game all the time does not mean that it's safe. And it's just really important to always have like those eyes of discernment, because things can change. Games get updates. Adults start playing games that kids are playing. The world
yes,
is constantly changing. And I think as long as adults have those conversations with kids so that they can be cognizant that things change, even if they're very familiar, um, it'll just be a better place for like everybody. Because even toys, like trampolines are very familiar, but trampolines have hurt a lot of people.
sure,
So it's
sure.
important for them to be cognizant of different things that could happen.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Really important. You talked about wanting to create a lasting impact with your books, with wonderful platforms that you have. What legacy are you most proud of creating so far?
I get a lot of compliments on my branding, and I really appreciate that, because I did work really hard on it and I constantly change it if it needs to be changed. But I do think it's really nice when people are like, yeah, I recognize you from your polka dots, or I recognize you from your bright colors or
Yes.
your big smile. Like I love that I've created a brand that people can recognize. Now I just have to scale it so more people can recognize it.
Yes, that's true. That's one of the things. The first time someone sees you, your personality, energy, and smile that you have will definitely be remembered. So I agree. Your branding is amazing.
Thank you.
So this have been so very eye opening. I want to know, where do you get the energy from? Every time you do a video, anything that you do, whether you're, reading a story or you're talking to someone, the energy that you just, give across is amazing. How do you keep that energy up?
Thanks. So it's really funny because when I decided to start doing this, I would show like my family drafts or like rough skits that I had planned. And my partner and my family were like, why do you even have a pin name? Because this is literally just you. Like, you're just goofy and weird like that. Like, this is just who you are. And it really is. Like, I want to say it's a little bit watered down for the kids, but like for my daughter and I, we'll just be in the house, like, meowing at each other or just being silly. And it's just a really good time. I feel like life is too short to take yourself too seriously.
Well, it's always good to bring that good energy, the joy, especially when you're dealing with children, because you want them to feel that energy and that love. And it's something that is so easy to pass on. It's just
Yes.
to give. So, Rella, this has been a wonderful conversation. Do you have any last minute tips or anything that you want to share with business owners? Because, yes, aren't you a business owner? Mm-hmm.
Yes, I am. Something that I heard a little bit over a year ago when I was first starting this journey was to hire slow and to fire fast. And when I heard that, I was like, that sounds awful. Like, why would you ever tell anybody that? But honestly, it just saves yourself a lot of aggravation and wasted money. I think as soon as you start feeling like, oh, this might not work out, like I'm going to have to do extra training or it's going to like stress you out a little bit too much, I think it's worth evaluating like, okay, maybe this should just be probationary and then we might have to like split ways because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to have something that's hindering you and holding back your resources to grow. And sometimes those moves are really hard to make, but they're really necessary. Like, and I haven't regretted any time where I've had to like not partner with anybody again.
Yeah, it comes with the territory. You got to make wise decisions. You got
Yes.
to be quick at problem solving. So, yeah, that's good advice. So, I love once again how you're connecting financial literacy, self love, and self awareness for kids. I definitely know that that's going to be something that they can learn now and use into the future. It's all a part of building a better future for ourselves and for our children. Before we go, can you give our listeners more information about your books? How can they follow you? How can they connect with you for speaking engagements or for anything that you have going on?
Yes, of course. So you can type in Rella B Books into Google and I'll pop up. My website is RellaBBooks.com and that's spelled RELLABBOOKS.com. And all of the information is there as far as booking me for author visits or getting any of my books. This year, I should be able to publish anywhere from 7 to 10 books, ranging from picture books to chapter books. So I'm very excited about that.
Amazing.
Yes, I'm very excited. But my podcast is Reading with Rella B, and on YouTube, I have the Rella B Books channel as well. So if you have smaller kids, they can do visual story time. If you have older kids that like riddles, then they would want to listen to the podcast.
And talk to them a little bit about what you do for other authors and how you're helping authors allow their books to shine and sell more books.
Yes. So I worked really hard on creating content, not just for myself, but also for the author community. And I do have a podcast where I have authors come on and read their stories and then talk about the lessons and the motivation behind it. But it's not just an author interview or reading. We also do a fun riddle to try to figure out what we're going to be reading about. And sometimes we'll do an interactive activity. And all of those podcasts come with free printables as well. So for the authors that come on my podcast, they get a printable that could be branded for their book. And then they also get the podcast information. And then they get a review and they also get Instagram posts. If it's used correctly, you could use it for your mailing list. There's so many different ways to use all of that different media. So I really do try to give back to the author community as well. It's been very popular, so I stopped recording for quite a while. And same thing for the YouTube videos. I do those for a lot of authors, but my branding got in the way. Like this little polka dot right here messes with my green screen. So I
Okay,
actually have
yes,
to
I
get
see
new
that.
clothes. So I've been learning a lot and I've had a small hiatus when it comes to my YouTube channel.
Well, I know you're a busy woman. You're doing a lot of things, but a lot of awesome things. And I want to thank you for all that you're doing for the kids and for parents and other educators as well.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your personal journey with us today. And to our listeners, if you love this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing.